Christian Hackenberg, former Penn State quarterback, was also at Fort Union Military Academy for a year prior to going to the college level to play for the Nittany Lions, and he joins us on 365 Sports. Hey, man, thank you so much. You got that beanie on. It's got to be frigid, right?
Sorry, yeah, we got a little snow up here yesterday, so was shoveling, doing some honey-do list here today, trying to get it done. But I appreciate you having me on.
What's it been like? Penn State has knocked on the door, but we know that it's been a while. A lot of these teams that are in the Final Four, Notre Dame late 80s, Texas 05, Ohio State in 14 or whatever. And for Penn State, they've knocked on the door a lot since 82 and 86. So what's it like to see this great run they're on?
Yeah, I think it's great for the program, specifically with what happened when I was there and just prior to it, just the depths that it was able to pull itself out of and remain consistent and relevant. That's been pretty cool to see and having played a part in that. So, I just think for us, like this run, the 12 team expansion of the playoffs has been a big thing. We benefited from that and have had a pretty light path to get to where we're at. But I think the biggest part is we've won in the manner in which we were supposed to. 10-point favorites, 14.5-point favorites, covered both games. And I think this matchup against Notre Dame is perfect. I got some flack for this, but I truly believe, and maybe my list is a little bit larger than most folks, but when you talk about brands and blue bloods in the college football realm, it doesn't get much better than Penn State and Notre Dame. So to see these two programs have this opportunity to play each other and then play for a national championship, I think is pretty cool, and I think it's good for college football.
Christian, James Franklin's knock is that he has not, he's chronically 10-2 or 11-1, which most people 9-3 is rough, right? That's a rough year for James Franklin, but it's who the 3 are or 2 are or 1 is that he hasn't been able to get over the hump. How much of a relief will it be to Penn State fans if they are able to get over this hump and then maybe they can move on? Because I feel like it does, just from the outside, kind of weigh the players, the coaches, like they're thinking about it a lot. Like, we've got to get this done.
Yeah, one of the big changes I saw, and he talked about it after the Ohio State game, which is that within itself, I think is a big step in the right direction. It's just about how much pressure and emphasis he started to put on those other opponents. And realistically speaking, just from my opinion now, watching the programs that have taken that next step to being kind of the standard in college football, the maturation process starts with your own internal program being the bar, right? And expecting to beat the teams that you're supposed to beat. Coach Franklin's done that throughout his tenure at a pretty efficient clip, much more efficient than I think even some of the programs that have been in contention consistently. But to your point, it's come down to Ohio State. We've traded with Michigan, but it's been tough. And I think for him, the manner in which he lost to Ohio State this year and even Oregon, it was different in the sense that it just seemed like it came down to situational football, not like atrocious clock management or something like where they didn't seem to be aggressive on offense or something like that. They were throwing their shots. So I think that's a good step in the right direction. I think this matchup is going to be big in terms of, you're going to have the fans who, if we lose, are going to say, same old, can't get over the hump. But I think when you look at the body of work, we're trending in the right direction, and there's no elevator to the top. You have to build, and each opportunity is something that you can continue to use to get to that ultimate goal, which is being a team that is the standard. So I'm confident, but I say all that to say, we got to get something done here. And I think we've done enough up until this point to be happy at the end of the year, but this would be a really big one for him in a lot of ways.
What have you made of how Drew Aller has played this year? Very interested in this crop of quarterbacks, a guy who's actually where he started and not, bounced around through the transfer portal, oozing with talent. But just how have you seen him sort of put it all together and get to this point? And just what are you looking for from him as we get into this nitty-gritty of where the elite meet the elite?
Yeah, listen, I think a lot of it comes down to Coach Nikki. He's playing the game with a lot of confidence right now. And it doesn't necessarily reflect on the stat sheet. He doesn't have all these gaudy 300-400 yard games, but he plays efficient football. He gets the ball in his playmakers' hands, and he lets them make plays for him. I think that's been the biggest thing. And I think he's done a better job this year than previous years of like giving his guys chances. There was a lot of talk about being able to take shots and creating explosives and these things. And I think in previous years, a lot of that was Drew was either dead on or like he'd throw it 5 yards out of bounds or miss him by 3 yards ahead of him. Like he didn't really give his guys a bunch of chances. I thought this year he's done a really good job of that. I don't know if it was he was afraid to turn the ball over or what, but been really impressed with the intangible side and the intangible growth of him and how he's matured. And he just seems to be very confident in doing his job and allowing the guys around him to make plays and not putting too much pressure on himself. So he's in a good spot. And I think that's just where he needs to be for the rest of this run, right? We run the football really well. We feed 44. Tyler Warren's just special talent. And I think he's just going to have to make 3 or 4 plays when it comes to these bigger matchups that he doesn't necessarily make consistently or isn't asked to make consistently. This is an opportunity for him to do it. And if he takes advantage of it, great. And I think it's going to be good for not only himself, but the team.
You mentioned Andy Cottle, Nikki, who we got to see at Kansas do his thing. And then obviously he was a little bit of rumors about the West Virginia job and maybe going to get that, but he decides to stay there in Happy Valley. How much fun is this offense to watch, and how much fun would you have had playing in it, and just what stands out to you about watching what Andy Cottle, Nikki does on that side of the ball?
I think, offensive football, like there's a lot of flavors. Everyone talks about it, and he did a good job of describing it, right? It's vanilla ice cream, and then you add all kinds of toppings and stuff on it, right? But I think with Coach K, what's impressed me the most, and when I got to meet him when he first got the job, I was up there during spring ball and just got to chat with him for a bit. Like his approach to being a teacher. He's like, listen, man, like I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I'm not going to ask our guys to fit into a system that doesn't necessarily fit their skill sets. He's like, I want to teach these guys. I want to coach these guys. And ultimately I'm only as good as what they're able to process and execute. And I thought he's done a really good job of continuing to build that base of who he wants to be, but then add those flavors and those sprinkles to the top of it. And it's been really cool. He's super creative with formation, super creative with personnel. And I just think the biggest differentiator for him is he's got the guys really confident in what he's teaching them, and he's able to get them to execute it at a high level. And ultimately, that's what you got to do as a coach when it comes down to it foundationally. And I think that's been the most impressive takeaway for me.
Christian, we had Bobby Taylor, former Notre Dame star, played in the NFL a long time, on yesterday, and he went to the Notre Dame game against Indiana that opened up the playoffs. Penn State, of course, was at home against SMU and blew them out with a couple of big pick sixes in that game. Were you at that game, and can you explain what the atmosphere was like, even if you weren't?
I wasn't, because I wasn't going to go brave that. I braved enough cold games up there this year. But I'll tell you what, it is a very special atmosphere. I know a lot of folks who were up there, they talked about it. They were a little skeptical just because of the weather and then kind of how the parking lot looked about 3 hours before kick. But then they said they filed in really well. And it's a great venue, man. If no one's ever been up to Happy Valley and Beaver Stadium specifically, incredible place. I still think the whiteout, maybe Death Valley at night down there at LSU probably rivals it. But I've been to Tennessee. I've been to Bama. Like, the whiteout's a special place. So they were able to carry it. And I thought it was really interesting, just the home field advantage. And then also just the first round bye guys all losing. That's a cool little piece for the college football committee to chew on next year in terms of how they're going to reshape things.
I'm just looking at the matchup earlier in the week. I guess I had it in my head that Notre Dame and Penn State had played a lot. It just felt to me like they had only 19 times and 9-9-1. In the series. But when you get two Titans like this, does maybe kind of a pseudo rivalry maybe build up like this? Because, there are a lot, especially Penn State and Notre Dame fans, that overlap in the area quite a bit, Pennsylvania and Indiana. So I would think that this is probably pretty heated in that region.
Well, I'll tell you what, my family's originally from northeastern PA, and if there wasn't a Penn State flag outside of someone's house, it was a Notre Dame flag. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there were quite a few heated discussions at church on Sunday up in the Schuylkill County, Scranton area. But yeah, it's really unique that they haven't played as much, but they had a series in the 90s, and then the first whiteout was actually a Penn State Notre Dame matchup in 2007. So, they're two brands. They're too big. Like you said, the fan base is crossover. I'm just super excited because I think the way both of these teams are built this year, it's going to be an old school football slugfest matchup. They're going to try to control the line of scrimmage. Both teams lean heavily on the run. I don't think either offense is tooled to turn this into a track meet. So if you like old school, 80s, 90s type of football, I think you're going to get it. And I'm really excited just, again, for the optics of college football, what these two brands mean. I hope they come out and put on the show that I'm expecting based upon what both teams have done this year.
Yeah, I looked it up too, Paul. 9-9-1, and they have not played since 2007. They had 12 years in a row when they played, and that's what I remember because of my age. I remember that was more of an annual deal. You were there when James Franklin took over for Bill O'Brien. What was it like when he shows up? He's been there ever since, obviously. Paul brought up a little bit about what he's won or not. But what was that like? And did he have to re-recruit you when he showed up?
Not really. I mean, I had already come off my freshman year and like the timing, with the sanctions and all that stuff, like we had already been pretty committed to trying to do what my class and others were going to try to accomplish there, which is really be the bridge guys and keep the thing afloat. I think Coach Franklin because Bill came from the Patriots, man. Like he really truly was like a player's coach. He treated us like pros. And he needed to at that time because, we had the transfer portal option before the transfer portal existed. We had a free transfer, no sit, go play, whatever. So everyone tried to take our whole team away from us, and we were able to keep it together pretty well. But when Coach came in, I think it was a shift, and you're seeing kind of the fruits of his labor the past really 8 years in terms of facility investment, the Beaver Stadium project, the way he approaches recruiting. He was much more of a CEO and kind of brand builder, right? So there was a little bit of an adjustment for us coming off of Bill, like who was just a football guy and wanted to live and breathe in that building. But Coach, I think, has done a good job of like taking on all of the turmoil and turnover and athletic department issues and ultimately building this thing and getting it to a position where, we got Pat Kraft up there now, who I think's very aligned and very bought into giving him every resource he needs. And the development's been pretty cool to watch, like as a player. It wasn't always the easiest when I was in the building, but like now seeing it all kind of play out, I thought he's done a good job of growing, done a good job of getting the alumni and the letterman back in there. Hell, we got a bunch of guys on staff who I played with. Tight ends coach was my center my freshman year. Dion, Jordan Lucas, Miss Dan Connor. But Dan's back up there. So just seeing guys back is really cool too, because that's one of the things that I think differentiates us from a lot of the other folks in the college football landscape.
How does this game go for either team, and what's the thing? Because they seem pretty just different uniforms, different coaches, kind of same exact style. Yeah,
well, I think it's cool for Al Golden, having been a letterman. A captain at Penn State. I've been calling this the Al Golden Bowl, but I think the defensive philosophies are pretty well evenly matched. Defensive personnel as well. I think it's going to really come down to Drew and Riley making 4 or 5 plays that they haven't made all year and being able to do it. And then the one aspect, it was covered a lot during the Georgia game in terms of Notre Dame's creativity on special teams. But one thing Coach Franklin's preached since I was in the building is just creativity on special teams and being able to use that third team as an advantage. A lot of people just take it for granted and kind of go through the motions, but coaches put a lot of emphasis in special teams, and we've benefited from some pretty big special teams, explosive plays and turnovers and things of that nature throughout his tenure. So I think special teams is going to be potentially the leg of the game that could tip it, where someone can steal a possession, someone can steal 7 points. And I really don't see this game being, a 35-42 type of game. I see it being like a 21-24, 28-24, maybe even in the teens type of football game. And it's going to be about who can steal some points and who can ultimately stay on schedule offensively and score points in the red zone.
Christian, you're from that area. And you mentioned you were there during the transition. And then, of course, a lot of the NCAA infractions with Bill O'Brien there for 2 years and then Coach Franklin. Says a lot about you, that you basically put your head down and joined a program. It was not going to be easy. We just saw SMU, who had their deal back in the late 80s. And a lot of shrapnel, so to speak. What was it like? Was it an easy pick for you?
No, I mean, it definitely wasn't an easy pick. I went to Fork Union for high school. So I was at Fork Union Military Academy my sophomore, junior, and senior year in high school. And I had a high school football coach, Mickey Sullivan, who had been there for, I think my last year was the year he retired, and it was his like 45th year of coaching. So he got the opportunity to coach guys like Eddie George, Chris Perry in high school. And Mickey was as straight of a shooter as they come, man. And he really made my process from a recruiting standpoint pretty straightforward and poignant. So I was comparing apples to apples everywhere I went. And a big part of it was being able to play in the NFL and develop that aspect and playing a system that fit my skill set. So when Bill got there, like I wasn't really going to Penn State up into my junior year when Bill got there, the end of my junior year when Bill got there. I was pretty much locked in on like I was going south, man, Alabama, Tennessee, Miami, somewhere like that. But when Bill got there, just the fit, him having coached Brady, being able to develop as a football player, that was a big part of the differentiating factor. And then, I just had a very strong confidence with the way the recruiting cycle was going that we were still going to be able to get some talent up there, and we did. And just being able to kind of stick through it, man. Like like I said, it wasn't easy. We definitely dealt with a lot of depth issues and at some key positions that really affected my ability to go out and reach my full potential. But like, I wouldn't trade it for the world, man. It was cool as heck being able to not have a losing season in those 3 years following it. Probably the youngest roster in college football for 2 or 3 years there. And just the relationships, man. Like the guys I played with, that's a cool thing that we were able to do. And the Penn State folks haven't forgot about it, and that's also been pretty cool now. So I got a little one, so being able to get them up there and get them around it's just cool to see. So was definitely not the easiest, but definitely worth it.
Did you wear black shoes when you played at Penn State? Is that like a uniform thing? Did you ever feel like maybe that made you look slower than you really were on film?
Hey man, listen, I ran a 4.73 at the combine. It's an electric time 4.73. I'm proud of that one. But yeah, no, we did wear black shoes. That was a standard. It still is. They give them now. Like I didn't get the whole Generations of Greatness game where they're able to wear the white cleats once or twice. But I will say this: the white cleats with our away uniforms, all white stormtrooper look, would be pretty slick. But I don't think we're going to be able to pull that one off. So,
Christian, we have a mutual, I won't call him friend, acquaintance for you because I don't know if he's your friend or not, but Bryce Petty, you guys were there at the Jets together. And it's okay if you don't like him. He's a dork. No, I tease. We love Bryce. We've known Bryce since he was here at Baylor. Do you have an embarrassing Bryce story that you can tell us, and then we will get him on the show very soon and play this clip back to him?
Especially if it's a good one.
Listen, I don't have a super embarrassing Bryce story. I will say this, though. Like, I enjoyed my time with Bryce up in New York. He and I shared lots of late nights burning through tape and just getting to know one another. And then I was able to do some podcast work with him as I was getting out. But Bryce he's a goofball, man. He's one of the better guys that I've ever been around, better teammates. But gosh, you got me on the spot, man. I'd have to think. But he's definitely a good time, and tell him I said hello. I'll have to reach out to him after this.
Yeah, we'll text him and tell him you said a lot of good things about him. But it's good to have you, Christian. I appreciate it. Thanks for responding as quickly as you did. It's great to have you on. Stay warm, even though you're used to the cold, and get back to those honeydews too.
Not a problem. Appreciate you guys, and
you.
Hey, enjoy the remainder of college football season.
Christian Hackenberg, former Penn State quarterback. They play Notre Dame on Thursday. Good dude. Appreciate him. He was in the NFL. Paul, you mentioned he was there with the Jets. He also ended up playing 1 year. He played with the Jets for a couple of years, and then he was also a part of the American Football League in 2019 with Memphis. He also coached high school football for a little bit, and so appreciate his time.